Amen. Thank you. So we were studying from the book of Ecclesiastes, and the preacher, the writer of the book, has provided his conclusion that all is vanity under the sun without a view towards God. And he has explored the pursuit of human wisdom to a certain degree and also pleasures in its various forms. And now he sets his sights on the vanity of human effort and what that entails. It's obvious that this chapter 3, where we're starting tonight, kind of marks a transition here between some prose to poetry. And we see that he begins with, "To everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under the sun." He goes on to name times, times that are to be born, time to die, time to plant, to pluck what is planted, a time to kill, a time to heal, time to break down, a time to build up, to weep, a time to laugh, time to mourn, time to dance, time to cast away stones, and a time to gather stones, time to embrace, a time to refrain from embracing, a time to gain, a time to lose, and a time to keep, a time to throw away, a time to tear, and a time to sow, a time to keep silence, and a time to speak, a time to love, and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. Then moving on in verse 9 to verse 15, "What profit has the worker from that in which he labors? I have seen the God-given task with which the sons of men are to be occupied. He has made everything beautiful in its time. Also, he has put eternity in their hearts, except that no one can find out the work that God does from beginning to end. I know that nothing is better for them than to rejoice and to do good in their lives, and also that every man should eat and drink and enjoy the good of all his labor. It is the gift of God. I know that whatever God does, it shall be forever. Nothing can be added to it, and nothing taken away from it. God does it, that men should fear before him that which has already been, and what is to be has already been, and God requires an account of what is past." So in this section, what should our response be to Solomon's observations here? To everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven. What do you think he's wanting us to realize here with that statement? Yeah, Kyle? Yeah, we see this kind of cyclical nature of things, this balance of one versus the other extremes, and it's kind of balanced against what we read in the first chapter, where he was describing the vanity as far as what he observed in the earth and how things work there. These are more having to do with what happens to us, right? What's happening around men and things that occur in the lives of men. And I believe that is what he's trying to get across to a certain degree, is the lack of control that we may have over those things. But who is in control of those things? Who has set them in motion? God has. The point is, God is the one who's brought those things to be. We oftentimes don't choose when these things happen, if you'll notice. And each of these times, I'm not always choosing when it is a time to mourn. Things happen around me that cause me to mourn, and so forth. So we should see how everything works together, the way God set it up, and we can find strength in God's love and mercy no matter what condition we find ourselves in life. Think back to the promise made to Noah after God saved him and his family from the great flood. What did he promise him in Genesis 8:20? Several things he promises in Genesis 8:20. After he's done this, he says that then Noah built an altar to the Lord and took of every clean animal and of every clean bird and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And the Lord smelled a soothing aroma. Then the Lord said in his heart, I will never again curse the ground for man's sake. Although the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth, nor will I again destroy every living thing as I have done. Here it comes. While the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, winter and summer, and day and night shall not cease. So Man cannot affect those things. Those things will continue. No matter what we do, they're going to continue. And when we observe nature, we observe redundancy or vanity when viewed from our perspective, just as far as seeing it again and again, but also the amazing promise that those things will continue in that way, in that cyclical nature. It doesn't stay winter for 2 years. We have seasons, and it's a blessing that we have them. Other comments about that particular question at all that you would want to mention? Yeah, Richard. Yeah. In my house, it's more like Christy is concerned about the weather. She's not complaining about it, but it's like she's just always, what's it going to do? Where's the storm going to come in? Well, the way they always come in, they're usually from the west. They come across here. It's going to be in that patch of sky, and oh no, we got to get in a shelter. Yeah, maybe, but when I see it coming, then I'll take that action. So what is the one thing that you have absolute control over? What's the one thing you have absolute control over? Our reaction. And our reaction to those things we can control. However, even that is limited. Think about it. I have ultimate control of my reaction until I lose the physical ability to respond the way I choose. Or with injury or disability, or my mind goes. Dementia sets in. Other things happen. So even that control is only for a limited span at certain times. I may be born with a disability of some sort too. So let's control our bodies while we can, while we have that ability to respond the way that God would want us to respond. It's not going to be every day that I'll be able to respond just the way I want to, maybe even in my mind. And I had not really thought about that much until all of Christy's grandparents and parents have Alzheimer's. So you're seeing it over and over and over again. Some of you probably have those situations in your families, and you see they're not the same person that they once were. And they respond differently to situations than they would have otherwise. So even in that way, it's limited as far as what we have control over. It's important, too, as we progress through the cycles of our own lives, we should do our best to embrace each one with its challenges and its particular rewards. These cycles we see in our families. I've loved my wife, my children, whenever we were a younger family, and I thought I could never love them more than I did then. And then you see your own children grow up, and you see your own children marry and have children of their own and have their own households. And then you think, wow, they're standing on their own, and they're in God's family. And this is the cycle. That was once us, and now it's them. And you're moving past that point in your life where things have to change. Things in a marriage change a little bit during those situations, right? You're not the same that you once were when you were young, and you don't have that just enduring purpose every day that I'm focused on my kids, I'm focused on my family. Well, it's just Christy and me. She is my family right now, So some of you have gone through those transitions as well. And I have to say, if you treat it right, you can love that other person more than you've ever loved them before, and look back on all the accomplishments and the struggles, and especially with my wife, never showing disrespect towards me. She's never been bitter towards me. Those things are things we can appreciate at other points in our life. And so we can look at these times and realize that, yes, we are going to be impacted by these changes and fluctuations, but if we approach it the right way, then it can be beneficial, and it can be rewarding for us at each phase in life. In Ecclesiastes 3:14, He writes, I know that whatever God does, it shall be forever. Nothing can be added to it and nothing taken away from it. God does it, that men should fear before him. So Solomon gives us this little beam of understanding shining through this door that we're looking at of these observations that God is permanent. And throughout these times under the sun, he is steadfast. He is steadfast. He is not changing, and he is powerful. He has dominion over everything. Other comments you want to make about that particular question at all? You want to add to that? And number 3, why has God prevented us from knowing everything from beginning to end? Why has he prevented us from knowing that? Don't you wish you knew everything, beginning to end? Yeah. Yeah. For our own good. It could be very well for our own good. He knows what we can handle. Good point. And it's God's territory. We can't do anything about that end the way God can. What else? Yeah.
They're worriers. There's a lot of people who are worriers and think that if we knew, every day, every time, every situation, we already knew 43 years from now what's going to happen, we would worry ourselves to death. We would not be focused on what we need to focus on, which is what's right in front of us. We would just be consumed with worry, and it would affect our faith. It would affect so many different aspects of our life.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Warriors. So you're going, oh yeah, we're warriors. Oh yeah.
That God does because he doesn't want to complicate our life. Life is simple. We just follow God's rules. It's very simple for us.
Okay, good. Another reason he gives us in verse 14 is that men should fear him, right? Right? I mean, you may be a warrior, but there's someone greater than you. God is greater than us, and we should fear him. And God is going to require an account of what is past. He is going to hold us accountable for those things. So it's important for us to realize that who God is and to choose him first. We see again in Romans chapter 1 of the New Testament, Romans 1, verse 20, for since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. We observe the world, we should recognize his power. We should see in these seasons and the way things operate logically and just with incredible precision that there is a God and there is a true one God. We're never going to be God. Ben kind of was hinting at this, that it's not our territory, and us being subject to the cycles of life helps us to remember that. We're not deity. We can't control everything. So the victory that we seek is certainly beyond the sun. It's not here under the sun. Other comments that you'd like to make? Let's look at number 4. How is the statement in verse 15 true? That which has already been and what is to be has already been. How is that true? Yeah, Lori. Yeah, there's that leads me to an understanding that helps me anyway, and has helped some others understand that what the Bible teaches for those in the first century or even long before is relevant. It's relevant because we're all going through the same type of life experience as humans as they were. Technology is different, but as far as what we're actually experiencing, these times, they're the same. These cycles are the same. Some may say, well, oh, of course there's things new. We're going to Mars. Elon's going to make it. He's going to Mars. We're going to get there. Well, maybe one day, but in times past it was going to the moon. And in times past it was traversing the whole earth by air travel. Before that it was going by boat. And before that, hey, we're going out west, past the frontier. So this isn't speaking of specific, there's nothing brand new that you've discovered technologically. It's nothing new as an experience for humans. There's nothing new. There'll always be someone that's traversed something, done something, go, I found it to be the same conclusion. It wasn't satisfying. We got to Mars, and it was dirt, just like it was on the moon. So you had your hand up, I think, Wayne. It's relevant, right? The information was relevant, very relevant. And all of Scripture is relevant because we're all going through these human experiences in the same fashion, so to speak. And without the recognition of God, all of these things that we may pursue would be completely meaningless without any satisfaction ultimately in them. What inconsistency did Solomon observe with regard to justice? Let's look at this second section here in chapter 3, starting in verse 16. He says, "Moreover, I saw under the sun, in the place of judgment, wickedness was there, and in the place of righteousness, iniquity was there. I said in my heart, God shall judge the righteous and the wicked, for there is a time there for every purpose and for every work. I said in my heart concerning the condition of the sons of men, God tests them, that they may see that they themselves are like animals. For what happens to the sons of men also happens to animals. One thing befalls them. As one dies, so dies the other. Surely they all have one breath. Man has no advantage over animals, for all is vanity. All go to one place. All are from the dust, and all return to dust. Who knows the spirit of the sons of men which goes upward, and the spirit of the animal which goes down to the earth? So I perceive that nothing is better than that a man should rejoice in his own works, for that is his heritage. For who can bring him to what will happen after him?" So what is this inconsistency he sees with regard to justice under the sun? Yeah. Very good. Yeah, there's no absolute justice here. Sometimes just not even sheer fairness doesn't exist here. There's corruption among judges, corruption among men. There's corruption among those who are tasked with governing. How have you seen this for yourself? I mean, just in casual conversation. I had a chest x-ray done last week to get some credentialing done so I could go visit some doctors at a hospital. That was one of the requirements. You had to pass a chest x-ray. So I went and had it done. And the man who was testing me was obviously from another country. And so I asked him, "Hey, where are you from? Where are you from? What do you always like to hear about other places?" He said, "I'm from Cameroon." I said, "Okay, where is Cameroon?" I'm sorry, I don't know where that is. "Oh, it's in Africa, near Nigeria." So, okay, I looked it up later. I know where it is now. So was it beautiful there? He goes, "It's absolutely gorgeous. The country is beautiful, but all the people are oppressed by corruption. The government is corrupt, and it's a horrific place to be if you're living there and stuck there. So my family's still there, but there's no justice in Cameroon." Isn't that just what we're talking about? And this gentleman might want to know more about the justice that God will deliver for his family who are back there. One day, as Wayne just pointed out, Solomon says God is going to judge in the end. It's also kind of an interesting question to note that if people in general want justice, why is it that they want justice? Why is there an innate sense of justice? That people have some sort of sense of right and wrong? Just an interesting question to think about for those that are agnostic in that camp that you may deal with. So this is the reality of injustice under the sun, and sometimes this causes people to have doubts. Why would this cause someone to doubt God? That there's injustice here on this earth. Why would this cause someone to doubt that God is who he is? Yeah. And those injustices occur here, and so those are happening. How do we respond to someone who says, well, how can there be a God? Because this happened to so and so. And if there was really a loving God, he would never allow that to happen. What would you say to someone like that? Yeah, Cody. Yeah, it's delayed justice at his will. What else? What's something else you might think about with regard to answering that question too? Anybody else? Yeah.
Somebody else might get justice on it, whereas you may not. So it all depends on the situation. And I mean, just take Wilfam's case. We don't know which way it's going to go. I mean, because we can just pray that his family does get justice, but at the same time, like we say, it's up to God right now. They may get it or they may not get it, and we just have to live with that situation. I mean, just you have to take each individual case. So we cannot just say that God will not provide justice for people on the road, because it does happen. You see that people are being taken advantage of, and they get justice. So justice prevails. So we can't just say that everybody's not going to get justice.
And God is ultimately in control of those governments, allowing some of that justice to take place. So he does care to that degree here, right? Now, I think even in Botham's case, let's think about it. God did not do that to him. However, God set everything up in the beginning where everything was perfect. How did sin enter the world? Through man. Free will. In order to allow free will for mankind to choose, that means it will necessarily possibly hurt another person. And so God is not condoning those choices, and he's certainly not willing that those things would happen to those people. When Jesus came here on the earth, what did he do a lot of? Healing. He was very compassionate. He has love. But free will allows us to choose to serve God, and it was ultimately through sin that delivered those things on those people, not because God created it that way or condones it or wants it. So sometimes that's a little bit of a logical argument that helps someone come around to the idea that, oh, it wasn't God who wanted this. It was man who chose to do it. Yeah, Ben. Yeah. Am I ready to get exactly what I deserve? Yeah. Ooh. Wow. I'm so thankful that God is not going to give me exactly what I deserve because of Christ. So those are some things that you can draw from these types of passages and discussions that are sometimes helpful in just our general conversations with folks that may come up. So when are these lessons most difficult to apply in our lives? When it's me or when it's you, so a family member, someone that I love, someone that's enduring hardship at the hands of an unrighteous person. Can you think of some people in the Bible who endured this type of treatment at the hands of others? One just sticks out easy, right? Who? Yeah, think of Joseph, think of David at Saul's hands, right? I mean, he's pursued. That was not just. How about the Christians who suffered at the hands of our brother Paul before he was a Christian? I mean, all those things, that's when it's hard. It's easy for us to go, yeah, we ought to endure. Man, but when you're going through it, whew, it's tough. It can really bear down on you hard. So things like what we read in Revelation, which we've studied here before, should be encouraging. Victory is going to go to the righteous. He's already won the victory. It is coming. We shouldn't lose heart. And God does know about it, and he does care about it. And he is delivering some, even here. How are humans like animals? How are we like animals? Yeah, Sue? Yeah. That's right. All of us have physical bodies. Animals have physical flesh. We have flesh, and it's going to return. What makes us different is our soul's going that way and the dog's going that way, right? So there are no dogs in heaven. There's no animals there. They don't have a soul. Animals truly are existing just under the sun. That's how animals exist. When you think about it that way, animals really do exist that way, and we have something better to look forward to that allows us to escape the idea that this is all there really is. This is not all there really is for humans. We have an eternal soul. Anything else you want to comment about that before we move on? Yeah, Richard. Yeah, that's right. That's right. What a blessing. What a blessing. I want to go through lesson 4 a little bit and catch up a little bit possibly tonight. So we're going to look here at first at this little paragraph that starts off the lesson here. And this is really a chapter about toiling, or at least some of it's about toiling and the vanity of working yourself to death. And I want to read this little section if you didn't have a chance to read it, because I think it really illustrates this well. It says, Ray Pritchard tells the story of a conversation between a hard-driving corporate attorney and a professional fisherman friend whom he found teaching his 2 young sons to catch crabs. "Why aren't you out fishing?" he asked. "Because I've caught enough fish for the day," his friend replied. "But why don't you catch more fish than you need?" What would I do with them?" responded the fisherman. "You can earn more money and buy a better boat so you could catch more fish. Then you could buy a fleet of boats and soon be rich like me." "Well, what would I do then?" "You could sit down and enjoy life." "What do you think I'm doing right now?" the fisherman said. He's sitting there enjoying life. Simply put, a job is not the meaning of life, nor what it earns you. A measure of your worth. There are far more important things that all that industry cannot buy. Immensely more important is how all our activity serves to produce a godly character and to build a solid relationship with God and others. I just think that really illustrates some of the rat race that we sometimes get caught up in, that we're working so much and so hard to push for what we talked about last week about desiring riches, that we cease to recognize what's right here in front of us and what access we have to joyful things just in our lives on a daily basis. And someone who gets so caught up in wanting more and more may never really enjoy anything that they've ever had at the end of the day. So I'd like us to look at these passages, Ecclesiastes 4, 1 through 16, and we're just going to read 1 through 8 here to begin with. It says here in Ecclesiastes chapter 4, "Then I returned and considered all the oppression that is done under the sun. And look, the tears of the oppressed, but they have no comforter. On the side of their oppressors there is power, but they have no comforter. Therefore I praise the dead who were already dead, more than the living who are still alive. Yet better than both is he who has never existed, who has not seen the evil work that is done under the sun. Again, I saw that for all toil and every skillful work a man is envied by his neighbor. This also is vanity and grasping for the wind. The fool folds his hands and consumes his own flesh. Better a handful with quietness than both hands full together with toil and grasping for the wind. Then I returned, and I saw vanity under the sun. There is one alone without companion. He has neither son nor brother, yet there is no end to all his labors. Nor is his eye satisfied with riches, but he never asks, for whom do I toil and deprive myself of good? This also is vanity and a grave misfortune. So how is it that Solomon reconciles that it would be better for someone to be dead than alive, and even better if someone had never even existed? That would be better. Yeah. I tell you what, it ceases, right? When you're dead, the toiling is over, right? So there is some sense of relief in that. And of course, for the Christian, if you're looking beyond this earth, it's very, very good comfort. But if he's limiting it just to this experience, it means it's over. At least you're not having to suffer anymore, right? Good point. Others. So if one's going to have to live a life of being oppressed, then this life would be pretty miserable if that's all there ever was, right? At least when you're dead, you're free from the toil. And one who's never existed has not even seen the evil work that's done under the sun and had to wrestle with these injustices, with, of course, only a view towards this life. So in what way are the following vanity? Skillful work. Skillful work is vain? How is that vanity? How does that come back to cause you problems? Yeah. Kyle.
You mentioned the neighbor envy skillful work. It conjures up images in my mind of movies or shows where you see a competition between, light displays around Christmas time, neighbors.
Yeah. Good. Do you have something, Richard? Oh, okay. Anybody else? Yeah, Joanna? Even if this man who works or woman works with skill, with the best of intentions and the most humble spirit, does it prevent someone from being jealous of them and envying them and hating them? No. They can still be hated. So that's the dilemma. You still reap some pain from something that you've devoted yourself to, possibly. You see that with, and I'll tell you what makes it easily occur is if that person who's skillful brags about it. So you can egg them on. You can beg for the envy and all the hatred that comes your way if you want to brag about what you've accomplished and brag about how you can do this or that, or what you have, this or that. So at the end of the day, there's going to be some vanity. It's not all fulfilling to have skillful work. What about both hands full? Both hands full. How is that, in a way, vain? Kind of depends on what it took to get it, right? You got two full hands, and you've worked all your life. That's what you're devoting your whole existence to, and that's what you've got, and you've not had a chance to even enjoy what's in your hands. That's pretty vain, isn't it? But if you can enjoy some in quietness and in peace, then you have some sort of satisfaction from it. What about working with no companion and no end in sight? Working with no companion and with no end in sight. How is that vain?
The man who works his whole life and he has no family, not married, no children, so no heirs, no one to share with, no one to endure successes and failures with.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no one there to help him up if he falls, right? There's no one there to encourage him. There's also no satisfaction in actually using what he's earned to the benefit of those that he loves either, right? And for himself, the labors are never enough. He can never work enough to be satisfied. He can never satisfy his eyes. They're never full. They're never satisfied. So all the sacrifices that were made for the accumulation may not even direct him at all. As far as directly benefit him at all. So all those sacrifices may not really do much at all, even in this life for him, if that's all he's focused on. Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely going to require some balance in this life to, yeah. So constantly pursuing riches, like the story we read above in the summary about the man who's always pursuing riches in his a corporate attorney life, but the one who is sacrificing to gain riches may never have an opportunity to enjoy them. So we got to watch out for that. And why is it that Solomon tells us that two are better than one? Two are better than one. Let's look at the rest of this chapter in verse 9. Two are better than one because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, one would lift up his companion, but woe to him who is alone when he falls, for he who has no one to help him up. Again, if two lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one be warm alone? Though one may be overpowered by another, two can withstand him, and a threefold cord is not quickly broken. Better a poor and wise youth than an old and foolish king who will be admonished no more. For he comes out of prison to be king. Although he was born poor in his kingdom, I saw all the living who walk under the sun. They were with the second youth who stands in his place. There was no end of all the people over whom he was made king, yet those who come afterward will not rejoice in him. Surely this also is vanity and grasping for the wind. So how is this this person rewarded by having two rather than one? What's the advantage of two over one? Yeah, companionship, encouragement really does go a long way. I mean, it really does. Have you thought about why corporations tend to do a lot better at business than a sole proprietorship? A sole proprietorship can't accomplish nearly as much and sometimes has struggles that they can't get past. But people working together can accomplish a lot more than the sum of just the two that they are. So what else? What else here? What are some other reasons that two are better than one? Yeah, one gets injured, pick him up. You can support him, pick him up. What else? Even in the sharing of heat, right? You got two people, they can stay warm, but one may be cold all alone. So I don't know if you've ever been really, really cold. I know Seth Holderby has been really, really cold when he was overseas. He's told me those stories, and I think he would have held up against anybody if they would have been there to stay warm. He didn't have proper gear. He was basically frozen to death out there for hours on end, guarding a station. And his gear had not arrived like it should. So he was out there with normal gear. Am I right? That's kind of what was going on. So he knows what cold is. And if you only can expose half of your body to cold, and the other half you've got against someone else, wow, you can not only you can double up your efforts. You're not cold on both sides, but you're also insulating each other. So there's insulation there. You're protecting each other. You're helping each other. You're sharing together. So I think that's a great analogy Solomon gives us of just how important it is that you have people along the way that you can have as companions and work with. What's the other example here? One may be overpowered by another. Two can withstand him, and a threefold cord is not quickly broken. Have you ever been in a situation where you wish you had a few people with you? You've been traveling somewhere and you go down the city or whatever. You go, oh man, But if you had two or three people with you, I tell you, you're not nearly as you're not scared about the one guy who may come out and want to mug you or whatever the case may be. So this idea of two can withstand that one, and a threefold cord is not quickly broken. We know binding up a cord, 3 strands, it's really hard to break that cord. Even if it's made of really thin material, it's hard to break a 3-strand cord. Other comments that you want to make mention of here might be good for us? I'll tell you, for us here in this congregation, this is a lesson for us. We need each other. And none of us are here trying to go it solo as far as trying to make it through the ups and downs in our lives and cycles through life. Hopefully you reach out to the people here whenever you're struggling and have someone to have a conversation with, or someone to kind of hold you up at the time that you need it, and also that you'd be willing to hold them up whenever they need your help. How is a poor and wise youth better than an old and foolish king? How is a poor and wise youth better than an old and foolish king? Yeah, Chris. Pride and arrogance. And the king is untouchable. So who's going to approach the king and say, hey, you're really making a big mistake here. You're really messing up. Off with his head. There's no recourse with a monarchy, right? You're at his disposal. So a young, poor man, how is he better off? How is a young and poor man better off? Yeah, Richard.
Well, according to Solomon, in verse 13, he's likely to still receive instruction.
Yeah. Likely to receive instruction. He can be corrected and become better. He can become better than who he is that day. How often are we the old and foolish king in our own lives when it comes to listening to God's instruction, or even just listening to a dear brother or a dear sister who may bring us to their side and say, I really need to talk to you about some things. I've made these same mistakes before, and I don't want to see you go down this path, man. Are we willing to hear it? Are we willing to change? Or are we bow up, how dare you approach me, the old and foolish king of my life? So we got to be careful, right? Be careful that we don't become hardened. Because I tell you, in our society, we're told, live your life. You're in charge of you. You do whatever you want. Whatever makes you happy is what happiness is. No one should judge you in anything. We live in a free country. You just go on and on. Well, we could stand to use some correction on occasion, couldn't we? From a loving brother, not criticism, some correction. That's a little bit different, right? So what do we learn about popularity here in Ecclesiastes 4:13 through 16? What do we learn about popularity? Yeah, Linda? Great. That's exactly right. Yeah. So when the king's gone and he's got no power, you think anybody cares about that king anymore? No, they don't care about the king anymore. They care about the new king who can give them what they want or give them justice or whatever they need. Yeah.
Short memory of people that were superstars, 50 years ago, most of the population is completely forgotten about.
Yeah, that's right. Short memories. And memories fade because death is here, and death wipes memories, right? So those people that once knew, I was talking to somebody I was thinking of Steve Dodd, and in the business I'm in, he was saying, hey, I know if you ever get into intraoperative monitoring, I know some surgeons, but you better hurry because they're all starting to die now. I mean, the ones I've known from years ago, and they're kind of retiring and dying, and so you better hurry if you want to do that, if you want to know anybody that I know. That's how fast it happens. I mean, just in the same generation, things drift past us and past our memory. What wisdom is found in this chapter that will help us maintain a proper perspective on our daily work? What is going to help us maintain this proper perspective that you learned from this chapter, or these last two even? Yeah. And we have great things we can do in this life with the time we have for God. And everything we have is a gift from God ultimately. If we recognize that, then we can find happiness even in those hard days. It's not as if they're all mutually exclusive. You can be mourning, but there can be joy in that same experience at the same time too. Thank y'all. Appreciate your comments tonight.
If you're using a songbook tonight and would like to mark the invitation song, we'll be singing number 287, There's a Fountain Free. At this time, we'll be singing in the supplement number 21, On Bended Knee I Come. Do, on bended knee I come, with a humble heart I come.
Good evening. Can you imagine being in the situation that Zacchaeus found himself in? In our Bible reading this week, we're reading about Zacchaeus, and most of you probably know the story. It's an interesting interaction that he has. To Zacchaeus' surprise, he found himself with a surprise house guest, Jesus, the Son of God. It's interesting, though, that Zacchaeus didn't show up that day to invite Jesus over. He simply came that day to climb a tree and see this man from afar, just to get a glimpse of him. He wasn't there to invite him over. Yet in verse 5, Jesus comes over to him and says, "Zacchaeus, come down from the tree. I'm staying at your house today." Imagine the thoughts and the situation that likely unfolded at that moment. My house isn't ready for Jesus. I can imagine Zacchaeus running home and telling Mrs. Zacchaeus, "We got to clean the house, pick up all the toys that the kids left out, put the sheets on the guest bed, get a meal going. Jesus is coming over right now." Obviously, I don't know anything about Zacchaeus' home life. But do you think he was ready for a surprise visit from the Son of God? Zacchaeus had a surprise guest come to his house. He had no time to dress it up, to make it look nice. Jesus came over and saw his house exactly the way he left it and the way he lived in it every single day. Ready or not, Jesus was coming over. Now, let's put ourselves in Zacchaeus' little shoes for a minute. Is your house ready for Jesus to come? Now, for you, I'm not talking about it being clean or having all the toys put away or anything like that. If Jesus made a surprise visit to your house tonight, would you be happy with what he walked into? Are you living a life for Christ just while you're here on Sunday and Wednesday, or do you live it at home when nobody's looking? When Jesus got there, what kind of shows would he find if he turned on your TV and looked at your DVR? Would he watch them with you? What would he have to say about the calendar that's hanging on your refrigerator? Is there any time for him on it? What would he say about the way you're raising your kids and the example that you set for them? Would he have something to say about the way you treat your spouse? Is Jesus, God, and or the Bible discussed in your home? What would Jesus see if he came to your house unannounced? Would it be an environment that you felt happy and comfortable inviting him into? It's kind of a scary thought. Zacchaeus had a surprise house guest. With no time to dress it up and look nice, Jesus saw it exactly the way he left it, exactly the way he lived in it. Ready or not, Jesus was coming. The way that we live our lives when no one is looking is important. It says everything about the kind of person we are and about the kind of Christian that we are. One day, Jesus is coming back. He's going to come and he's going to look in our homes and he's going to look in our hearts, and we will have no time to dress them up and make them look nice and clean. He's going to look at it the way we left them. He's going to look in our hearts exactly the way we live every single day. He will see it exactly the way it is. Are you ready for that surprise visit? Is your heart in a state where you feel comfortable inviting Jesus in to come and take a look? We need to be sure our hearts are in that good state, that they're clean, that they're pure, ready for him to come. Because when he comes and looks into them, our eternity depends on what he finds. We need to be ready. If you can look at your heart and you feel that way, that you don't feel like it's clean, you feel like if Jesus came in tonight, you would not like what he saw, and he wouldn't like what he saw, clean it up. We have time now knowing a guest will come to our home. Let's get ready. Jesus will come. We don't know when. The Bible tells us he'll come like a thief in the night. Whenever that is, let's be ready. If you need to get ready, I encourage you to use this time you still have now to do so. There are plenty of people here who are willing and able to help you to clean up your life or to do anything that you need to do to get ready for Jesus' return. If you need prayers or encouragement of any kind, I encourage you to come forward now as we stand and sing.